Are Iran's elite forces now more united than ever, as the IRGC's aerospace chief suddenly resurfaces amid intensifying conflict? Majid Mousavi has now returned to the ground, appearing in operational zones even as earlier reports suggested the IRGC commander had gone missing during the war. Iran is firmly rejecting any claims of a rift within the IRGC, instead showcasing its expanding missile and drone capabilities as a display of strength. Non-stop, deadly attacks on Israel continue to intensify, even as Donald Trump signals a desire to bring the war to an end. Iran is now openly taunting the Trump administration, claiming Washington does not know how to find a way out of this escalating crisis. The aerospace chief of Iran's elite Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has now resurfaced amid the ongoing conflict, drawing renewed attention. Iranian state media released footage showing the IRGC aerospace force commander actively engaged during the course of the war. Majid Mousavi was seen in official visuals visiting underground missile facilities and interacting directly with deployed forces. In the footage, Mousavi appears alongside Iranian personnel while receiving detailed briefings on operational developments. The state television broadcast also highlighted the scale and depth of Iran's ballistic missile stockpiles. His reappearance comes amid earlier reports suggesting that the IRGC commander had been missing during key phases of the conflict. As the confrontation between Iran, Israel, and the United States intensifies, retaliatory operations by the IRGC have continued to escalate. However, parallel reports indicate that the aerospace commander has been facing growing internal criticism within the establishment. Sources cited by Iran International suggest Mousavi is under scrutiny for casualties sustained within the aerospace division. There are also allegations that he was absent during critical periods, leaving operational units without consistent leadership. Complaints have reportedly been submitted to senior IRGC officials regarding his conduct and decision-making. Additionally, he has been accused of providing inaccurate assessments related to missile launches and strike outcomes. These internal divisions emerge even as Iran continues to expand the scale of its missile and drone operations across multiple fronts. Even as the US president signaled he wants to slow down or halt the war, Iran defiantly escalated the conflict by launching a new round of strikes deep inside Israeli territory. On March 31st, Iran dramatically widened the battlefield, opening fresh fronts and hitting what it calls US and Israeli targets across multiple points in the Middle East region. The IRGC boasted of what it describes as heavy, coordinated attacks on American and Israeli positions, branding this as Wave 88 of its ongoing Operation True Promise 4. Iran's military claims it has launched drone attacks on what it calls key industrial and high-tech hubs inside Israel, describing them as strategic centers vital to the country's capabilities. Tehran says the March 31st drone wave specifically hit important telecom and industrial centers in Israel, aiming to disrupt both its civilian infrastructure and its wartime logistics. Iran's forces further allege that their targets included sites linked to global giants such as Siemens and AT&T inside Israel, accusing these firms of indirectly supporting its adversary systems. According to Iranian statements, some of the strikes were directed at facilities close to Ben Gurion Airport and the crucial port city of Haifa, both seen as critical nodes in Israel's security network. Iranian outlet Press TV reported that a Siemens-linked industrial software center near Ben Gurion was singled out, portraying it as a brain hub for advanced control systems. Iran claims the technology developed at this center supports weapons production lines and the design of sophisticated military systems, making it a high-priority target in their eyes. Officials in Tehran also pointed to a telecom research and development hub in Haifa, which they linked to AT&T, saying it was hit because of its role in advanced communications. Tehran alleges this Haifa facility develops networks, cloud platforms, and artificial intelligence tools that underpin Israeli military operations, framing the strike as a blow to its digital backbone. On March 31st, Iranian authorities released updated figures detailing casualties resulting from US and Israeli strikes. Tehran claimed that more than 450 Iranian civilians were killed in what it described as sustained and deadly attacks. Despite these losses, Iran signaled continued resolve as the conflict entered its fifth week without signs of de-escalation. Officials also asserted that Iran remains in a position of strength, stating that US forces have not achieved their objectives. A government spokesperson further claimed that Washington lacks a clear pathway to exit the ongoing crisis. Meanwhile, a senior aide to Russian President Vladimir Putin also criticized the United States over pursuing a conflict seen as difficult to conclude. Today, political scientists abroad and many in our own country point to a whole range of developments that reflect the complexity and contradictions of the current period, and they draw attention to the fact that the system of modern international law is being undermined in an increasingly provocative manner. There are fewer and fewer restraining factors that for decades provided relative stability. Put simply, some countries have lost all sense of limits and are now openly declaring claims to certain territories without even troubling themselves to give their plans any legal basis. The latest example is very telling. Marco Rubio, the U.S. Secretary of State, answering a question about how to end the war in the Persian Gulf as soon as possible, said that everything depends on Iran. It only needs to open the Strait of Hormuz, otherwise it will continue violating international law. He meant that Iran should not have closed the Strait of Hormuz, because this allegedly runs counter to international law. 2 days earlier, President Trump said that he was not interested in international law, that he had his own morality and his own instincts. This is, quite literally, a two-way street. Some elements of international life are taking us back to the distant past. In a state of chaos, representatives of the highest military and political leadership of certain countries are abducted or killed. You know this very well. Entire city blocks and their inhabitants are being destroyed with Old Testament cruelty, as are children's clinics where hundreds of children die at the same time. Nuclear energy facilities under international safeguards are being bombed, along with other civilian sites, basic infrastructure, and life support facilities. In these circumstances, no one except us and our like-minded partners seems to care about international law. We are witnessing a sharp rise in the role of military force in international affairs. This is leading to intense pressure on the constants of international relations. They are being shaken apart. As many experts see it, the root of the problem lies in the foreign policies of the leading Western states, whose financial and economic system functions effectively only under conditions of external expansion and exploitation of every possible kind of resource in other countries. Indeed, the West, with its unchanging hegemonic ambitions, has entered into a clash with the aspirations of the global majority to overcome existing challenges on the basis of equality and justice, or in other words, on the basis of the principles of the UN Charter agreed after World War II, the sovereign equality of states, non-interference in internal affairs, and the right of nations to self-determination, which all legitimate governments must respect. It is clear that these principles were not always applied in real politics. I would even say they were applied only rarely. But they remained guidelines that no one openly questioned. And it has always been our effort, and the effort of other states, to draw attention in any given crisis to the fact that there was a consensus on how the world should live after World War II. This was a completely natural part of diplomatic dialogue. Now even the Europeans have begun speaking up and calling on the United States and Israel to follow the principles of the UN Charter. But they themselves did much to ensure that these principles remained only on paper. We must return to them and restore to them at least some of their former role, if you like, the role of moral authority. But this will not be easy. What we are now witnessing is a sign of a growing and increasingly large-scale conflict, one that some have already called a new world war, including in assessments made by our colleagues. In fact, not only Russia and China, but also other states, BRICS, the SCO, and in general all more or less independent centers of power and development, are becoming objects of aggressive confrontation by those who are accustomed to living at others' expense and feeling like hegemons. And the actions we are now witnessing in the international arena, the implementation of de facto coups under the slogan of combating drug trafficking, under the slogan of eliminating a regime which, they say, has for 47 years engaged only in global terrorism, are ultimately, as is being openly stated, linked to the desire to control ever more oil and gas resources. At the very least, this clearly explains the meaning of many of the initiatives we are seeing. All of this has, of course, fully manifested itself in the current situation in the Persian Gulf and in the Middle East as a whole. Russia, as you know, advocates an immediate end to U.S. and Israeli aggression against the Islamic Republic of Iran. We consider the use of military force against civilians and civilian infrastructure unacceptable, wherever they may be, whether in Iran or in the countries of the Gulf Cooperation Council, which are themselves also experiencing a very serious negative impact from this situation. We are ready to provide the parties to the conflict with mediation and other assistance in their efforts to find ways to return the situation to a political and diplomatic track. Yesterday, I held a meeting with the foreign ministers of the Gulf Cooperation Council countries. The Secretary General of this structure and the Foreign Minister of Jordan also took part. We set out all our assessments in detail. The meeting lasted more than 2 hours. And we recalled the concept of collective security in the Persian Gulf region, which presupposes full normalization between Iran and its Arab neighbors.